Fuck it.
Fuck it. Fuck it.
Hey, mama. If you are a mom and are tired of the wash, rinse, repeat burnout cycle of motherhood, this podcast is for you. If you feel lonely and isolated in your motherhood journey, this podcast is for you. If you feel like you have completely lost your identity since your babies were born, this podcast is for you. If you feel like every other mom has it together except for you, this podcast is for you. My name is Amanda, and I'm a life coach dedicated to teaching every mom the tools she needs to liberate herself off the back burner. I am living proof that a woman can be present and loving to her kids while also being a whole-ass person outside of being that kid's mom. The secret? Learning when to say fuck it. Also, if you are not already on the Fuck It Mothering newsletter list, I highly recommend that you join us because signing up for the email newsletter is you reclaiming your authority off the algorithm. Because if you follow anybody on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see their content. So if you love what I'm doing here at Fuck It Mothering and you want these tools and this encouragement and laughter and joy and everything that I bring to the table, you want that in your everyday. Just because you follow me on Instagram does not mean that the algorithm is going to show it to you, because they are going to prioritize accounts that make them money. So sign up for the Fuck It Mothering email newsletter. I do not spam you. Scout's honor, I hate emails. Okay. So I put a lot of love into my emails because I understand as a mom what a sacred space that is, because we get bombarded with so many useless emails from all the extracurricular shit our kids do, all the school shit, the parent group from the schools. Like, I know your inbox is a sacred space. I write to you for you, out of love for you, to help grow you. The link to sign up for that will be in the description box of this episode. And if you are new to the newsletter, you will also get a free copy of my time management guide for busy moms, which I lovingly titled "Shit PJ Day is Today," because we've all been there. And I'm going to make an audiobook version of that because I recognize that so many of us don't read, because if it can't come with us, we're just not going to do it. So I want it to be as accessible as possible for everybody. And I'm going to make an audiobook version of that when it releases. If you are already on the email list, I'm going to send it to my current newsletter list, so you won't miss out on that. But then you'll also have the paper copy, or it's a digital copy, paper. But sign up for the email newsletter. Reclaim your authority and your power from the algorithm. Fuck the algorithm. It's not in service of your highest self, but I am. And if you want to work on yourself, if you are ready to say fuck it to everything in your life that has kept you from pouring into yourself, from loving yourself, from taking care of yourself first and treating yourself as a priority and being the leading lady of your own fucking life, sign up for a consultation, 1 hour, free, just for you. So we can talk about how coaching is the key that you need to do those things for yourself, to never feel like you're a victim of time, to always feel like you have an abundance of time, because you do. Time is a construct, a man-made construct, and I can teach you how to be the fucking ruler of it. I love you guys. I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you next week. Well, hello. Thank you for joining us today. I have another guest on for you guys. Her name is Emily, and she is a trauma recovery coach. I'm so excited for this conversation because her story is amazing. And I'm just really excited to share her with you all. So Emily, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, first of all. So I am a holistic trauma recovery coach. I am the founder and CEO of Mended Soul Wellness, the author of Rising from the Ashes, Reclaiming Your Life After Traumatic Childhood, and the host of the Motherhood After Trauma podcast. But beyond all that, I'm the mama of 2 beautiful babies and growing a farm with my husband and just loving life now. It hasn't always been that way. But yeah.
Yeah. So where are you guys located at? Where is your farm?
We are in New Brunswick, Canada. So we're an East Coast family, and saltwater is very close by. So
nice.
I love that.
Have you always been in that area, or did you transplant there?
So I grew up in Nova Scotia and came to New Brunswick to do my post-secondary education. Then I moved to Alberta, which is like way on the other side of Canada. And then in 2021, my husband, my 2 kids, and I relocated to New Brunswick. So it's been a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. What prompted the move? Like, what do you love about New Brunswick?
We wanted our kids to be closer to extended family. Mm-hmm. And it was a good time to move, even though it was the middle of the pandemic. But our kids got to know some grandparents before they passed on. So that was a blessing. That's
good. That's really good. Yeah. Family is so important. And it's really nice when you get to be near each other. So what did you major in college? Like, what was your path before coaching found you?
So I was a sociology major in my undergrad, and then I did an education degree and spent 6 years in a public school classroom before I had my kids and wanted to stay home to raise them, and then discovered coaching because when I was a little girl, I wanted to help kids like me. And I was unaware that, it was the mid-90s. So I don't know that life coaching was a big thing in the 90s. I don't think it was. But but I discovered coaching, and it's like I've found my place.
Yeah, it feels like coming home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like you came from a traumatic childhood, but that you also wanted to help other kids. So like when did that desire like spark inside of you?
Believe it or not, I think I was 6 or 7, and I was walking across the parking lot going to a child psychologist appointment. And I knew that kids didn't deserve to have parents who didn't know how to love them. And that hurt that I experienced, wasn't fair because they didn't ask to be there. So someday I wanted to help kids like me. And for a long time, I wanted to be a child psychologist because that was in my realm of things that I could do to help kids like me.
Right.
But then, those teenage years hit, and you realize how long you have to go to school to do
it's a long
something like
time.
that. And you look at the tuition bill and you're like, maybe I can change my course and still help people like me.
Yeah, right. Maybe there's a different way to help that doesn't involve so much debt and so much time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you want to, but then you kind of like switched into teaching. So what appealed to you about teaching?
Well, I was still working with kids, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to help my students, but the public classroom has changed so much, and there are so many limitations with what you can do to help kids in a public classroom, with red tape and all of this stuff. And sometimes parents aren't willing to listen. Sometimes administrators aren't willing to listen. And so in that area, you can do a lot of good, but your hands are also tied a lot. And so I decided to leave the classroom and go at it from a different angle and help mamas like me, who were once kids like me.
Right. Change the course for the future generation by helping your generation.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind like sharing like your story, if you're comfortable. If not, that's fine. Of the child, like your childhood and what you went through and how you had to overcome that.
Yeah. So my mom abandoned me when I was 6 or 7 months old. She dropped me off at my paternal grandparents' house and basically said, deal with her. She signed all of her parental rights away. And I was raised primarily for the biggest chunk of my life by my paternal grandparents. My dad, when I was little, lived with my grandparents and I. When I was 6, my dad got married to a lady who had a son of her own. And at that point, I was really close with my dad because he was the only biological parent that was around all of the time. So I wanted to go live with my dad. And my grandmother thought that was fine because he was my father. And that's where I should be. So I lived with my dad and my stepmom and my stepbrother for about 18 months. And during that time, I was abused by my stepmom and stepbrother in all of the ways.
Oh my gosh.
Physically, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, all of the ways. I was a relatively healthy child before I went there. And during the time I was there, I was fed, but I was fed just enough to keep me alive. I looked like a malnourished child on one of those commercials for a third world country, like a immigration camp or something. I was not allowed to stay home on weekends. I went to different family members' homes to spend weekends. And when I went to those places, the first place I would head for was the refrigerator because I was hungry all of the time. So one weekend I would go spend time with an aunt. Another weekend I would go spend time at my biological mom's house. And another weekend I would go spend time with my paternal grandparents. And it just rotated every third weekend. And so like my stepmother fought with my elementary school to have me held back in first grade. Because she didn't want me to be ahead of her son. And the school did it, which I can't, as an educator, I can't understand how they would comply with that. But I think things have changed a lot since the 90s.
Yeah. And what about your dad? What was he just watching TV while all this was happening, like turning a blind eye?
He was was working a lot of the time. They were very sneaky with what they did and when they did it. So like if I was home alone with my stepmom and my stepbrother, and I was sitting in a chair in the living room, for example, just waiting for the school bus, waiting for it to be time to go out to the school bus. And my stepmom walked by going from her bedroom to the bathroom, she would smack me on her way by. And by that time, my dad was gone to work. My stepbrother and I would play in the basement a lot. And that is where the sexual abuse came in. We were downstairs, adults weren't around. And he was physically bigger than me and stronger because there was nothing to me.
Right. And they weren't feeding you.
So, yeah. So, I learned during that time how to distract somebody so that they wouldn't hurt me. And those are skills that I don't think any 6 or 7-year-old should have to know, but there are many, many 6 and 7-year-olds that do have to know those. And my heart breaks for them. So one Sunday evening, I was at my biological mom's house and she told me to go get my stuff together so that I could go home. And something clicked in my head and I decided that I wasn't going home that night. So I went in my half-sister's room and put my stuff in my bag, trying to figure out a way that I would not have to go home. My sister had this big wooden desk in her room, and so I was small enough that I could fit in the chair hole and put my bag in front of me so that nobody could see me. And that's where I sat for, I don't know, probably half an hour to 45 minutes until my mom noticed my bag. I mean, people came looking for me and they called my name, but I didn't answer them. My mom noticed the bag and moved it and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm not going home." She's like, "You're not?" I said, "No, I'm not. They hurt me." So she got on the phone, and that night I went back to live with my paternal grandparents, and things went back to quote unquote normal. And it was as if nothing happened. So I started a new school because my grandparents lived in a different school zone.
Yeah.
I started a new school and life went back to normal. We didn't talk about what happened. We went on with life. And I think I was 9 or 10 the first time I told my grandmother I didn't want to be alive anymore. And she looked at me dead in the eye and said, "We don't talk like that." So I didn't talk like that. And I kept it in, pushed it down. And no surprise, during my teenage years and much of my young adult life, I dealt with anxiety and depression. I moved across the country to get away from it because I wanted to be in a place where my story didn't follow me.
Right.
I wanted to be anonymous, like no story here. I met the man that is now my husband in Alberta. I went to Alberta, funny enough, to marry a cowboy. But I married a New Brunswick farmer instead, which is really quite ironic. After we got married, when we decided that we wanted to try and have a family and nothing was working. And I dived into educating myself on how my system was supposed to be working and
Mhm.
collecting data on how it was working. And then connected with a naturopathic doctor who was able to explain to me how my stress response and all of those repressed emotions were impacting my health. And it was
Mm.
like a veil was lifted, and I could actually understand how it was all connected, and that I wasn't broken, because for so much of my life, I thought my body hated me
Mm.
because it was working against me. And that wasn't the case. Me and my body had the same goal. We were just going about it in different ways. We just
Right.
wanted to stay alive.
Yeah.
And we were going about it in different ways. And I didn't understand the language of my body because I was so detached for safety reasons, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was your
So
coping mechanism. Your main coping
that,
mechanism was detachment from your physical body.
yeah, yeah. So that's a big chunk of my story. There's a little bit more with regards to how all of that played into my transition into motherhood.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It was a lot to process and work through and acknowledge, and it's been a journey.
I bet it has. I bet it has. Like, you've been through so much, and it's incredible that whenever I hear someone's story like yours, who it's just like it's really heavy, deep shit, and you're going through it as a kid, I always marvel at the fact that, like, hey, you're not an asshole, you know, like you grew up to be a good person, and that in and of itself is like such a huge feat, because you have every right to be an asshole. If anyone has a right to be an asshole, it's like you're it. And the fact that you're not, and you know, even as the child going through it, said, this isn't right, and I want to, when I grow up, help other kids going through stuff like this, is so beautiful. But you know, when you grow up and you just want to run far away from it, start fresh, create a clean slate, and then you do have your baby, all that stuff comes back up. It has to, right? Because
Oh man, yeah.
it motherhood just brings all the triggers out. Triggers that, like, you didn't know that you had, triggers you thought you were over, triggers you thought you buried deep enough that they'd never resurface. When did that start for you?
Like
Was it like
a
during
freight train.
Yeah. Did it start like during pregnancy with you? Like, because you know, I can't imagine you had like a good relationship with your mother, because she abandoned you when you were a baby. It sounds like you had some contact with her throughout your but still,
Yeah,
that's
she was around when it was convenient for her.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so whether you wanted to or not, like, that does inform what a mother is, like your definition of motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah. So during my pregnancy, I questioned if I would be a good mother, because I really didn't have a good example. The best example I have is my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was growing up, my biological mom abandoned me. She, when it was convenient for her, she came around. She did weekends during that 18-month stint I was living with my dad. My stepmom hated my guts as a 6 and 7-year-old child. She didn't want anything to do with me. Every other woman that my dad had a relationship with didn't want me. So it wasn't just her, it was all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother is from the generation where not necessarily kids are seen and not heard, but the authoritarian type of parenting was
Yes.
huge.
Yes.
So, you're a child, you listen to me, don't question me. And when I make a mistake, we're not going to acknowledge it. Like, I don't have to apologize to you. So those were my examples.
Yeah.
And so when my daughter was born, no surprise, I hated being a mother because of what a mother represented to me.
Right.
And it took me a really long time to uncover that and unravel that. A couple of years, actually, into my motherhood journey. And I was journaling one evening, and it just came flowing through the end of my pen. I was bawling. But looking at my baby daughter after she was born, my nervous system went into overdrive. Get the hell out of here. It's not safe.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. You need to run.
Right.
Meanwhile, at the same time, cognitively, I knew that if I listened to that I was going to repeat the cycle that my mother did.
Right.
I would have been abandoning my child.
Right.
Like she abandoned me.
Right.
And causing the same hurt to her that I had experienced. And so it took a lot of deep, deep gut strength. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it required going deep and digging my heels in and saying, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not abandoning my child. I'm not going to hurt my husband. I'm going to stay and figure this out and fight through it because I wanted this child.
Yeah.
And she didn't ask to be here.
Right.
So it took a lot of praying, to be quite honest. A lot of praying.
Yeah.
And some therapy to help me discern the boundaries of where my biological mom stopped and I started, where I stopped and my daughter started.
I love that.
And once I was able to see that my mother's choices that she made in 1989, 1990, those were her choices.
Yeah.
That she made with the information and knowledge and circumstances that she was living in.
Right.
Those were hers. Those were not mine.
Right.
I don't have to make those same choices. I have the power to make different choices because it's 2018.
Yeah.
And I am a different person. I have different circumstances. Everything is different. It's been 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
And my daughter is not baby me. She doesn't have to experience that same hurt.
Right.
And to be completely honest with you, to be on this side of my journey, watching my kids grow up in not a perfect household. I've got my shit to deal with, and so does my husband. We're not perfect parents.
We all do.
But they are not dealing with the trauma that I dealt with. And it's amazing to watch, but there's a part of me, my inner child is jealous at times.
I think that's really good that you recognize that, though.
Like, I'm so happy that my kids are not traumatized.
Of course.
To the level that I was traumatized and that's a good thing.
Yes.
But, it's my inner child, my inner 6 and 7-year-old, my inner 5-year-old. Like, my daughter, she's at the age now where she gets curious. Mommy, what did you sit in when you were in the car or when you were little?
Mm.
I sat on the seat, dear. It was the mid-90s.
Right.
Car seat rules weren't the same.
No, they were not.
But like she's curious and she's starting to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I'm having to discern what I tell her
Mm-hmm.
and what I wait until she's older to tell her.
Right.
Because she doesn't understand that sometimes mommies don't love their babies. And sometimes mommies hurt their babies.
Right.
And I don't want my 6-year-old to know that.
Yeah.
Honestly, her world gets to be carefree.
Right.
And her biggest worry gets to be how annoying her brother is and what cartoon is on television.
Right.
Like that to me is a luxury for her.
It is. And it's beautiful that she doesn't realize that it's a luxury.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you can distinguish, like, when you do feel your inner child being jealous, that it's your inner child. You can make that separation between you right now and your inner child. Because I think for most people who haven't done the work on themselves and they don't have that emotional intelligence, they don't have just like that just intelligence of themselves, they would just be jealous and they would have this bitterness towards their own children and not understand it and not know why it's there and not know how to like overcome it or process it. And it would just kind of be a part of their dynamic in their relationship with their kids.
Yeah. Your ability to be aware of yourself is a huge part of healing. And I mean, it's challenging because for so long, for me anyway, it wasn't safe for me to go inward. I had to be so aware of what was going on around me and where's my dad and where's my stepmom and where's my brother and am I in danger of getting hurt?
Right.
Do I have enough food? Do I need to, all of those things that I had to be hyper aware about. And I remember as a little girl going to ask my dad what his work schedule was so that I would know ahead of time how to prepare.
Wow.
Like how heavy is that?
Yeah, you were just in pure survival mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you had been in touch with yourself or your body at all, like the amount of pain that you were in, you needed to be like numbed from that in order to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. Your body is so brilliantly designed that while numbing out can be a bad thing, sometimes it's necessary for survival because that's your body's main objective is to stay alive.
Yes.
And it's the same when you're going through a healing journey and you're working through all of the things. Just because time has passed and it's been like 30 some odd years since it's happened, your nervous system can't discern that. It doesn't know present day from 30 years ago.
Right. Your brain has no concept of time. If you're thinking about something for your brain, it's happening right now. Like we're always creating our own reality. And so if you're thinking about something, whether it's something that happened in the past or it's something that you're projecting into the future, that is very, very real for your nervous system right there in that moment. Yeah.
And it also cannot tell the difference between an actual danger and a perceived danger.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter if a lion is chasing you down the road or you're worried about your stepbrother beating you to a bloody pulp. It can't discern that. It's the same response. And that response is great if a bear or a lion or something does chase you and you can survive. But when it's prolonged, okay, like your entire life, it causes damage.
Yeah.
It causes a lot of damage physically to your body and your body systems. So that's a huge part of healing as well.
Yes. You had mentioned that when you were trying to get pregnant that you like weren't able to. So what was the fertility journey like for you, and what did you have to do in order to be able to conceive?
So we tried for about a year. My cycles previous to trying were not regular. At one point in my teenage years, I was getting a period every 2 weeks. So
Oh my gosh.
at that point, I was put on oral contraceptive. Like it was unchartable. Like I couldn't, the counting on the calendar, that nothing worked. I would be caught unprepared because counting on the calendar didn't work and I couldn't predict it.
Right.
So at that point, I was put on oral contraceptives. I was on oral contraceptives for a long time, which is not a good thing. They are not meant for long-term use.
Yeah.
Which is what I personally discovered. And then when I came off of those, we gave it a few months for my body to do what it was going to do. And I did hormone panels and the dye test. They make sure your tubes are open, which is horrendously painful.
I've heard that is so excruciatingly painful.
Yeah, I passed out.
Oh my gosh.
And, it was a lot of medical gaslighting in my experience. So I was told all my hormones were normal. My dye test came back normal. Tubes are all open. But I was doing a lot of self-education and tracking my cycles and doing the ovulation tests and, finding as much data for me as I could.
Yeah.
And then using that data to do more research. I discovered that I was having anovulatory cycles. So I wasn't ovulating every month. So my doctor at the time put me on Clomid, which basically puts your body in a headlock and forces it to do what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
And that resulted in a miscarriage, which then resulted in me firing my doctor because there was no compassion, which led to connecting with a naturopath who did explain how my stress response was causing all kinds of chain reactions, including the infertility that I was experiencing. So they put me on a series of supplements and vitamins, and it did a dietary cleanse. And one of the supplements that he put me on was called Videx. It's chasteberry extract. And what that does is it comes alongside your natural progesterone supply, what your body makes naturally, and helps to boost it gently. So it's not putting your body in a headlock. It's working with your body to boost your progesterone, which was my problem. I was lacking progesterone.
Okay.
So to give you a bit of a timeline, I miscarried on September 26th, 2017. Saw the naturopath on November 9th or 10th, 2017. And I was pregnant with my daughter by the 19th of December.
Wow. Wow.
So in my experience, those supplements and doing the things that I needed to do to support my body, not not put my body in a headlock because that wasn't going to be helpful for me
Mm-hmm.
with my years of trauma and all of that stuff. My body had been in a headlock, a self-induced headlock for years prior to any medical one.
Right.
So my body needed relief and nurturing.
Yes.
So that it could do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And so my daughter was born in September of 2018. She was healthy, 8 pounds, 3 ounces. I did have some birth trauma though. Emergency surgery directly after childbirth. That's another story for another day.
What happened?
So I had a lobe on my placenta and it detached in the process of delivery. So they had to take me in for an emergency DNC to make sure everything was
out,
cleared out. And yeah, because I was bleeding out.
Right. Yeah. I had a similar experience with my third child. It happened like the birth was fine, the labor was fine, everything was fine, but afterwards, and like they had already moved me into a different room out of the labor room. So this was like hours after giving birth. And I told them, I was like, I'm not feeling contractions because, your uterus continues to contract after the baby's out. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Well, it must just be from the epidural, like some lingering side effects from the epidural. And I was like, but I can move my legs and I can feel stuff. So that doesn't really make sense to me. And they were like palpitating my uterus and stuff. And they're like, well, you feel fine. So we think it's just the epidural. And then I went to go to the bathroom. I stood up and just gushing blood and I almost passed out. And then they were in my room. Yeah. There was like 5 of them in there and they were pushing so many drugs. They pushed like 3 or 4 drugs at the same time. I had an allergic reaction to one of them. So they had my bed tilted.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they had my bed tilted this way with my head down to try to get the blood, going the opposite direction because I was just gushing and gushing and gushing. And my tongue and my throat started swelling up and I was having a hard time getting anybody's attention because I could barely speak. And I was like, I'm having an allergic reaction. So then they were like pushing Benadryl and digging around, which, oh my God, was so painful because they couldn't figure out why I was bleeding. And still to this, like they never actually figured it out. But, doctor was digging around in there and I was like screaming in pain. And she was just like, I know this hurts.
Oh my gosh.
But if I can't find out what's wrong, I have to take you to the OR because you're bleeding too much. And I was like, okay, I'll hold still. Just try to find it because this really hurts. It was horrible. And then it just kind of stopped. Thank God. But yeah, I lost a lot of blood and it was very traumatizing because like she was my third birth and nothing had ever happened like that to me before.
It's a lot.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And my doctor, chalked it up to what they call lazy uterus, which I was like, excuse me, my uterus is a superhero. She is not lazy. Don't call her lazy. She's tired. Okay. But basically, like for whatever reason, the uterus just stops contracting after birth. And it's actually the number one, the most common complication for childbirth. And back in the day before modern medicine would kill women. That's why childbirth was the number one killer of women. And she told me in other countries that don't have like the hospitals and just access to what we have access to here, they automatically give women Pitocin after they give birth just to avoid that complication because it is like the most common complication to have. And that's actually exactly what we did when I gave birth to my fourth one, just to make sure that that didn't happen. They slammed me with more Pitocin after she was born, and they gave me a suppository of something else to make my uterus contract. But I was like,
Oh my goodness.
pump me with whatever you need to pump me with to make sure that doesn't happen to me again.
Yeah. Yeah. Childbirth is a lot.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly traumatizing, especially, and then on top of whatever trauma you're dealing with from before, like childhood trauma or domestic abuse or whatever it is that you're dealing, it complicates things. It can complicate things a lot.
So, what was your journey like when you started working on your, like when you made the decision of like, no, I am not going to like recreate this generational curse. I chose to have this baby. I chose to have this life. I know that I want this life, and I'm going to just sit in the hard until I figure this out. Like, what was that journey like? What did you have to do? What steps did you have to take?
Yeah. So I found a therapist who I did a few sessions with to help me get through the darkest part of it. And then I started searching for community. I knew that I needed other mamas to help me along the way, because I was living in Alberta at this point. So I didn't have any family nearby.
Mm-hmm.
It was my husband and I. We were our support system.
Right.
Sure, we had some friends and whatnot, but for the most part, we were our support system. All of our family was on the other side of the country.
Right.
Over 5,000 kilometers away. So I started searching online for a community of mother type figures, older moms who have been through it, who know how to support you as you are embarking on a motherhood journey.
Mm-hmm.
Mamas who have navigated healing trauma while also parenting their littles. And, our generation is taking a different approach than previous generations have about healing and parenting. So, finding that community was huge for me. Like-minded mamas who were able to support me on some really not pretty days, because that fourth trimester is a challenging one for a lot of mamas.
Yeah, it really is. Because we're fed the lie that like everything kind of just like goes back to normal, except you just add this baby, and like nothing is normal. Like everything in your life changes in an instant, and no one prepares you for that.
No. And the toxic narrative that is in our society that once you have a kid, you don't matter anymore. Everything is about them. And the narrative that you chose to have the kid, so you're not allowed to complain about how hard it is.
Or ask for help because you're inconveniencing people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I call bullshit on all of that. And,
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So finding that community was huge. And then once I started doing my coaching certification and learning that program, there were a lot of things in that process that helped me nurture my nervous system and give me strategies and techniques for calming myself down when triggers came up, because motherhood is triggering, point blank.
Yes.
And if you grew up in a traumatic environment and your nervous system learned a skewed version of calm, or calm wasn't in your normal, so calm equals bad,
Right.
Then how the hell are you supposed to teach a kid how to regulate if you're not regulated?
Right.
Because you weren't taught how to regulate.
Right.
So it's a process. It's been a process of reparenting myself and getting to know my nervous system and the mess that she was.
Yeah.
Because she was a huge mess.
Yeah.
And rightfully so for what she's been through.
Yes, she has every right to be a mess. And for the mess that she was, she did get you through it. And that's something that that's a step that I always like really insist my clients pause on. It's just like, please thank her. Like, thank this part of yourself, because I know she did not do a great job, but she did the best job she could and she got you through it.
Well, yeah. Just about a year ago, I was diagnosed with PTSD. It took me a long time to get diagnosed.
That's remarkable that it took a while to get diagnosed with that, because it's kind of like just hearing what you've been through. It's kind of like,
nobody, when I was a kid, no adult in my life pursued it. Nobody thought, oh, hey, Emily probably is having a hard time. And then I was blissfully unaware of how messed up I was. It was my normal.
Yeah, you don't know that anything's wrong with it when that's all you've known.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of struggle in my motherhood and navigating a household and managing a household, and how easily I was getting overwhelmed and all of this stuff. So I decided to go and advocate for myself. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. Given everything that I've been through, I probably have complex PTSD, but I have not been diagnosed. And with that diagnosis, I did my research. I'm a researcher. And I educated myself on what that means for the development of my brain and how that shows up. And then I looked back at what I've achieved in the life that I've created for myself. And it could have very easily gone another way. And I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I have to acknowledge how much of a badass I am, not in a I'm full of myself kind of a way, but in a holy crap, I lived through that. I came out the other side, and I'm not picking myself up off the side of the road.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you took the pieces of your life and you made a life for yourself. You didn't use the things that other people did to you as an excuse to just stay in victim mode for your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I came up with a statement, a motto of sorts. Can't complain about it unless you're willing to do something about it.
I like that.
So I can talk about what happened to me in my childhood, and I'm doing something about it. I'm using it for something other than a poor me story. Like, I'm fine. I don't need anybody's pity. I'm all right.
Yeah.
My kids are healthy and happy. My husband is happy. We have a good life. And you keep going, right?
Yeah, you keep going. And so not only do you and your family have a great life, but you're also helping other moms to do the same.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, because it's truly inspiring. You are 100% a badass. You get to claim that title and proclaim it from the tops of every roof, because you did the work. And you continue to do the work every single day.
Yeah, healing is not a destination, it's a journey. And so we keep going. We forge on.
Yep, we do. We keep going. So I like to end each of my interviews with a round of lightning questions. So are you ready?
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, so the first one is, what did you want to be when you grew up? But we already discovered that during your story because you were such a beautiful tiny human. You wanted to help other tiny humans, and I love that. What is your favorite kid-free dinner? So if you get to pick what's for dinner and no one is allowed to complain, what are we eating?
Oh, man. Turkey stuffing.
Turkey stuffing.
I love turkey stuffing. And
nice.
Yes, and potato salad. Carbs.
I love it, though. My mom is not a cook at all, but there is one recipe that like she gets to claim as her own, and it is potato salad. What is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. I really like, I'm trying to find the title of it. I really enjoyed Mindset by Carol Dweck. I also really like Girl Wash Your Face.
I have not read either of those. I need to add them to my list. I've heard of Girl Wash Your Face like from everybody because it went through like a really big popular phase a while ago. I got to read those.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your guilty pleasure entertainment?
I don't really have one. I quilt and play Monopoly Go. I play Monopoly Go.
Nice. Is it the digital version or is it the old school card one?
Oh, no, it's the digital version on my phone. I don't have the attention span to play like old school Monopoly.
They have a card. They have like a card. It's
a card game.
Yeah, it's Monopoly Go. It goes a lot faster than like traditional Monopoly.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more cutthroat. So I like that version. But yeah, traditional Monopoly with the board, it takes 5 years.
Yeah. I like Monopoly Go because within 5 minutes, I can go from having like $300,000 to $30 million. And it's amazing.
If only real life were like that.
Yeah, I keep thinking now if I could convert this Monopoly money into real money, then we would have something to talk about.
Yes. This next question I stole from the Low Life podcast because it's just too good of a question to not reuse. If your belly button was an actual button, what would it do?
Oh, man. If my belly button was an actual button, what would it do? I don't know.
So mine is
that.
I know, right? It could be anything. It could like make something happen. It could produce something for you. So mine is it would immediately make the world around me quiet so that like I would not be able to hear my children's chaos.
Yeah. Mine would be it would clean my house.
Nice. Which is actually a perfect segue into my final question. What's the one thing in motherhood you'd like to say fuck it to? I'm guessing it's cleaning.
Not necessarily cleaning. People coming behind me and messing it up immediately after it's clean. So it's like I wasted my time cleaning the damn thing.
Yes, because it's immediately not clean again.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel that. All right. Tell everybody where they can get in touch with you if they'd like to connect and where they can find your book.
Yeah. So you can connect with me on Instagram at emily.cleghorn.coach. You can also find me on my website, home.mendedmamalife.ca. You can find my book on there or you can find it on Amazon. If you go at it from my website, there is a button there that will take you automatically to your Amazon marketplace so that you don't have to spend all kinds of time searching. Awesome. But it is available on Amazon.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wonderful story with us. And I hope that you have a great weekend with your kids. And that I hope that this weekend for you is like the one weekend where like everything goes great and the messes are minimized, or they're like at least in the kid zones where they're supposed to be. Are you living your one wild life to the fullest? You're not? Why the fuck not? What are you waiting for? The time to live is now, mama. Do not wait until your youngest is in college. Let your dreams hire me for an hour so I can explain how I can help you achieve any goal in your life. You've put yourself off long enough. It's time to pour into you. The link to schedule your 60-minute complimentary consultation is in my show notes. Join the community of Fuck It Moms by following me on Instagram and Facebook at Fuck It Mothering. That's fuck without the U. So FCK It Mothering. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you never miss your weekly encouragement. And please rate, review, comment, and share. All of these things help with the algorithms, so that way when other overwhelmed moms are looking for encouragement, they can find me. Every month, I give away one of my favorite books and a Starbucks card to a lucky winner. All you have to do to enter is write a review or tag me in social media when you share an episode. See you next Sunday, gorgeous.